Right, let's get one thing straight. I don't normally do requests. People write in, "Oh, Jezza, can you review my Nan's Austin Metro?" And the letter goes straight in the bin. But when an invitation arrives, on paper so thick it could stop a bullet, embossed with a golden falcon, you pay attention. It promised a look at the car collection of the so-called King of Dubai, a collection whispered about in hushed tones at Goodwood and Monaco. A hoard of automotive treasure so vast, so ridiculously expensive, it makes the Sultan of Brunei's garage look like a provincial Halford's. But there was a catch, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, tucked away in the very last line of the invitation. A promise that by the end of my tour I would uncover a secret about this collection so shocking, so utterly mind-boggling it would change everything. Naturally, I was intrigued. A secret? In the world of hypercars, the only secrets are usually how much the owner paid for it after options, and how many times they've curbed the alloys. But this felt different. It felt significant. The prospect of seeing cars that exist only in myth and on the bedroom posters of spotty teenagers was tempting enough. The promise of seeing a Bugatti that had been hand-painted by angels, or a Ferrari forged in the fires of Mount Vesuvius itself. But to be offered a mystery on top of all that, it was like being promised a slap-up steak dinner and then discovering it comes with a free lifetime supply of Yorkshire puddings and a V8-powered gravy boat. How could I possibly refuse such an offer? So I packed my best linen shirt, a pair of sensible driving loafers and a healthy dose of British cynicism, and boarded a plane to the land of sand and absurdity. My mission was simple, to infiltrate this fortress of fossil-fueled fantasy, to cast a critical eye over the finest machinery known to man, and to unearth this tantalizing secret. What could it be? Was the king actually a penniless imposter living on a prayer and a rather large bank loan? Were all the cars elaborate fakes, cunningly crafted from fiberglass and hope in a shed in Coventry? The possibilities raced through my mind, each more ludicrous than the last. I was on a petrolhead's pilgrimage, a quest for the holy grail of horsepower. And so, here we are, on the precipice of greatness, or perhaps the precipice of the most elaborate and expensive practical joke ever conceived. I invite you, dear reader, to join me on this journey into the heart of automotive excess. We will walk through halls of polished marble, gaze upon wonders of carbon fiber and chrome, and question the very sanity of a man who looks at a perfectly good, multi-million-pound supercar and thinks, you know what that needs? More gold, and all the while we will hunt for the secret. The big one, the bombshell. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the end. It's a proper jaw-on-the-floor moment. Before we get to the cars, we must first talk about Dubai, because you can't understand the cars without understanding the place. Dubai is a city built by people who have clearly never heard the word no, or planning permission, or budget. It's a shimmering, sun-scorched monument to mankind's ability to look at a vast, empty desert and say, I know, let's build the world's tallest building here, and a ski slope there, and a string of islands shaped like a palm tree just for a laugh. It makes Las Vegas look like a quiet market town in the Cotswolds. Everything is bigger, shinier, and more unapologetically over the top than anywhere else on Earth. This is a place where the police drive Lamborghinis not because they need to, but simply because they can. The journey from the airport was an assault on the senses. Skyscrapers tear at the clouds, their glass facades reflecting the relentless desert sun with blinding intensity. The roads are less like roads and more like 10-lane rivers of supercars, a chaotic ballet of Ferraris, McLarens, and Rolls-Royces all jostling for position. You get the distinct impression that if you drive anything less exotic than a Porsche, you're expected to use the tradesman's entrance. The air itself feels expensive, thick with the scent of perfume, ambition, and high-octane petrol. It's a city in a constant state of one-upmanship, a playground for the world's wealthiest, where the concept of less is more was presumably outlawed sometime in the late 90s. My destination was a private estate on the outskirts of the city, a palace so vast it probably has its own postcode. The gates, which were easily the size of my house, swung open silently, revealing a driveway that seemed to stretch on towards the horizon. It was lined with palm trees, of course, and every single one was perfectly manicured. The sheer scale of the wealth on display was staggering. It wasn't just opulent, it was a carefully curated performance of power and prosperity. This wasn't just a home, it was a statement. A declaration to the world that its owner operated on a completely different plane of existence to us mere mortals. As I stepped out of the car, the heat hit me like a physical blow. but even that was quickly forgotten as I took in the scene. Fountains danced in marble courtyards, peacocks strutted on lawns greener than a snooker table, and in the distance a shimmering structure of glass and steel beckoned. This, I presumed, was it. The promised land, the garage, the sanctuary where metal deities rested. In a city defined by its audacious ambition, it was clear that the car collection housed within these walls would be nothing short of biblical. And somewhere, amongst all this madness lay a secret. The thought was almost as intoxicating as the heat. The structure I'd seen from the driveway wasn't a garage. Oh no, that would be far too pedestrian. It was a museum, a cathedral, a climate-controlled temple dedicated to the worship of the internal combustion engine. The doors slid open with a faint hiss, revealing a space that silenced even my most cynical inner monologue. The floor was polished black marble, reflecting the soft gallery-style lighting from above. The air was cool and still, carrying the faintest, most glorious scent of leather, wax, and engine oil. The sheer size of the place was disorienting. It wasn't a garage, it was an aircraft hangar that had been redecorated by a Bond villain with an unlimited budget and impeccable taste. My host, a man named Farouk, who was dressed in a pristine white dishdasha and spoke with the quiet authority of someone who could buy and sell my entire village before breakfast, simply smiled and gestured for me to follow. We walked past monolithic pillars, between which were parked, well, everything. To my left, a perfect chronological lineup of every V12 Lamborghini ever made, from the Miura to the Aventador SVJ, each one in a different, more retina-searing color than the last. To my right, the entire Ferrari Big Five, a 288 GTO, an F40, an F50, an Enzo, and a LaFerrari sat in a perfect semicircle, looking less like cars and more like priceless sculptures. It was overwhelming. A sensory overload of automotive perfection. Every car was immaculate, cleaned and polished to a degree that suggested an army of dedicated detailing gnomes worked around the clock. There wasn't a single speck of dust, not a fingerprint on the paintwork, not a hint of grime in the wheel arches. It was almost unnerving. Cars like these are meant to be driven, to be thrashed, to accumulate stories in the form of stone chips and splattered flies. These felt preserved, as if they were specimens in a jar, too precious to be exposed to the real world. It was magnificent, yes, but also slightly sterile, like a library where no one is allowed to actually read the books. As we glided through the hall, I tried to take it all in, but it was impossible. My brain simply couldn't process the value and rarity crammed into this one space. A row of every Porsche 911 GT model, a Bugatti Veyron next to a Chiron, next to a Devo, a pristine Jaguar XJ220 looking almost modest next to a Koenigsegg Jesko. Farouk explained that this was merely the modern classics wing, and that the vintage hall and experimental hangar were just ahead. I began to feel a strange sensation. It wasn't just awe. It was a niggling feeling that something was not quite right. A detail was out of place. A thread was loose in this perfect tapestry. The secret was here. I could feel it, hiding in plain sight. We moved into the next hall and things went from the sublime to the utterly ridiculous. This was the hypercar heaven wing, and it was patently absurd. Here the cars weren't just fast, they were weapons. Machines designed with a single-minded obsession for speed, pushing the boundaries of physics and frankly common sense. At the center of the room, on a slowly rotating platform, sat the undisputed king, a Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus. The bare carbon fiber bodywork seemed to drink the light, and its elongated tail spoke of its singular purpose, to punch a hole in the air at over 300 miles per hour. It's a car with more power than a medium-sized European country's Air Force, and it sat here silent and still. Lining the walls were its rivals, a who's who of automotive insanity. A Koenigsegg Regera, the car that does away with a gearbox altogether because, let's be honest, gears are for wimps. It looked like a spaceship that had taken a wrong turn at Alpha Centauri. Next to it, a Pagani Huayra BC, a car that is less a mode of transport and more a piece of kinetic art. Every single nut, bolt and switch is a bespoke jewel, a testament to Horatio Pagani's magnificent obsession. Looking at it, you feel you should be wearing a dinner jacket and discussing philosophy, not wondering if you could get it sideways around the hammerhead corner at the Top Gear test track. Then there were the rarities. A Lamborghini Veneno, of which only a handful were ever made. It looks like a furious origami stealth fighter, a car so aggressive it probably bullies the other hypercars for their lunch money. Opposite it, a McLaren P1 GTR, the track-only version of the P1, complete with a wing so large you could host a reasonably sized dinner party on it. These weren't just cars, they were statements of intent. They were engineering pornography, designed to make grown men weep and bank managers faint. The sheer concentration of horsepower in this one room was enough to alter the planet's rotation if they were all started at once. And yet, that feeling persisted, the nagging sense of wrongness. I looked closer at the Chiron on its pedestal. The tires were perfect, the Pirelli logos on the sidewall still pristine white, with none of the scuffing or wear you'd expect from a car that had been anywhere near a road. The brake discs, huge carbon ceramic platters, showed no signs of heat, no trace of brake dust. It was the same for the Pagani, the Koenigsegg, all of them. They were showroom perfect, too perfect. It was like looking at a collection of the world's most advanced running shoes, none of which had ever been run in. The mystery wasn't what was here, but what? Where were the scars of battle? Just when I thought my brain could take no more, Farouk led me towards a set of heavy, industrial-looking doors. "The experimental hangar," he announced with a hint of a smile. "His Highness has a varied taste." That, it turned out, was the understatement of the century. If the last hall was about pure speed, this one was about pure, unadulterated madness. This was the home of the automotive oddballs, the one-offs, and the what-ifs. It was a glorious celebration of vehicular lunacy, and frankly, it was the best room yet. It proved the owner didn't just have a fat wallet, he had a sense of humor, a very, very expensive sense of humor. Dominating the center of the room was something I can only describe as a monster truck limousine. It was a six-wheeled, matte black behemoth called the Devil 16, a mythical beast from a Dubai-based manufacturer that claims its V16 engine produces 5,000 horsepower. 5,000. That's not a typo. It's a number so ludicrous it ceases to have any meaning. The car doesn't exist in the real world. It's a concept, a flight of fancy. And yet, here it was. Parked next to it was an equally bonkers machine, the Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG 6x6. A six-wheel drive, twin-turbo V8 powered wardrobe on wheels, designed to conquer sand dunes, mountains, or the Saturday morning rush at Waitrose. The collection of curiosities continued. There was a Lycan Hypersport, the car famous for jumping between skyscrapers in a film about fast and furious people. It's known for having diamonds in its headlights, which is the sort of feature you come up with only when you've genuinely run out of all other ideas. Tucked away in a corner was a Vector W8, a slice of pure 1980s American hypercar fantasy that looked like a doorstop designed by someone who'd watched too much Battlestar Galactica. It was brilliant. It was also famously unreliable and almost impossible to drive. Seeing one in the flesh was like spotting a unicorn, a very angular, very temperamental unicorn. But as I admired a pristine Lamborghini LM002, the original super SUV, another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I ran my hand along the Devil 16's enormous side panel. It felt hollow. I tapped it. It was fiberglass. Not the high-tech carbon fiber of a hypercar, but the stuff you make canoes and cheap body kits out of. I looked at the Lycan. The famous diamond headlights looked suspiciously like crystals from a high-end chandelier. The Vector W8's cockpit, famed for its fighter jet display, was dark. None of the screens were on. In fact, none of the cars in this room looked like they could move under their own power. They were shells. Fantasies. And the secret was starting to come into focus. I started to walk back through the halls, but this time with new eyes. My brain was no longer fogged by the sheer spectacle of it all. I was a detective now, and the crime scene was the world's greatest car collection. I ignored the overall shapes and focused on the details, the little things, the things you only notice when you know something is amiss. I went back to the Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus. I knelt down and looked at the exhaust pipes. On a car that has genuinely been driven at 300 miles per hour, the metal around the exhaust would be blued, discolored by the unimaginable heat. These were as clean and silver as the day they left the factory in Molsheim. I moved to the Ferrari F40. The F40 is a raw, uncompromising racing car for the road. It's famously difficult, hot, and noisy. Every single one that has been driven has a story to tell through its imperfections. The thin paint notoriously shows the carbon fiber weave underneath, but on this one, the paint was deep, glossy, and flawless. Too flawless. I peered through the plastic window, no electrics on an F40 you see, and looked at the odometer. It was covered by a small, discreet leather patch. I saw another F40 at a dealership last year. Its odometer read 15,000 miles, and it was considered a low-mileage example. What was this one hiding? My guide, Farouk, was watching me, his polite smile never wavering, but I could see a flicker of something in his eyes. Amusement? Apprehension? He knew that I knew. I walked over to the Koenigsegg Regera, the car with no gearbox. I pointed at the small panel where the charging port for its hybrid system would be. "Could we see the engine?" I asked, a simple request. Farouk's smile tightened ever so slightly. "His Highness prefers the cars not to be opened," he said smoothly, "to maintain the integrity of the display. The integrity of the display. Not the integrity of the car." It was a carefully chosen phrase, and it told me everything. It all started to make a horrible, brilliant kind of sense. The immaculate condition, the lack of wear and tear. The experimental cars that were little more than life-sized models. The refusal to open a bonnet or a door. The perfect sterile museum-like quality of it all. These weren't cars. They were statues of cars. They were the world's most expensive, most detailed, most incredible collection of models. The secret wasn't that the king was broke, or that the cars were fakes in the traditional sense. The secret was far more bizarre, and in a way, far more impressive than that. I had one final question for Farouk, the one that would confirm my ludicrous theory. I stood in the center of the main hall, surrounded by hundreds of millions of pounds worth of automotive unobtainium. I turned to Farouk, who was now standing with his arms folded, a look of serene resignation on his face. "Farouk," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space, "there is not a single drop of petrol in this entire building, is there?" He allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Nor oil, nor brake fluid, nor battery acid," he replied. "His Highness is very concerned about the risk of fire." And there it was, the secret. The jaw-on-the-floor, mind-boggling, unbelievable truth behind the greatest car collection on Earth. None of them were real. Well, not real in the way you and I understand it. They weren't fakes or replicas. They were, in fact, the genuine articles ordered directly from Ferrari, Porsche, and Bugatti. However, each one was commissioned with a very specific, very unusual request. They were to be delivered with no engine, no gearbox, no transmission, no fluids, and no powertrain. They are perfect factory-built rolling shells. They have the right VIN numbers, the right paperwork, the right everything, except the bits that make them go. They are the world's most expensive and detailed one-to-one scale model car collection. It is an act of such magnificent, pointless, and utterly brilliant madness that I could only stand there and laugh. The King of Dubai isn't a king at all. He's not even a sheikh. He's a reclusive British billionaire who made his fortune in, of all things, the model-making industry. He started with Airfix kits as a boy and never stopped. He just got richer. He loves the shape, the design, the beauty, and the engineering of cars, but he has absolutely no interest in driving them. He finds it messy, noisy, a bit common, so he just collects the shapes. The cost of ordering a one-off engineless hypercar is, it turns out, not much less than ordering the real thing, but it saves on insurance, maintenance, and the ghastly business of having to actually use them. And on that bombshell, it's time to end. What I thought was a pilgrimage to a petrolhead's paradise turned out to be a visit to the world's most extravagant art gallery. A place where horsepower is irrelevant and beauty is everything. Is it the greatest car collection in the world? In one way, it's the worst. It's a stable full of thoroughbreds that will never run. But in another, it's the most honest collection I've ever seen. It's a pure, unadulterated celebration of automotive design, uncorrupted by the grubby business of driving. It's insane, it's pointless, it's wonderful, and it is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most Clarkson-proof car collection in the entire world. And for that, I can't help but admire it.